Speaker. Thank you ever so much for having the privilege of being able to bring this adjournment debate to the House today. In 1960, Somaliland emerged independent from the British Empire after many years as the British Somaliland Protectorate. And for 5 days it was independent before it took the step to merge with what was then the trust territories of Italian Somaliland, historic Italian Somaliland, to form a union. Both nations entered that union with optimism, with a sense and a view of creating a pan-Somalia, of where all Somalis would be able to come together. And actually the hope was for so many of those in Somaliland that actually this would be a union of equals. Sadly, over the following 30 years, those hopes and those aspirations of what might have been were not fulfilled. And indeed, as the years progressed, the situation got worse with military dictatorships. And instead of there being a situation, a tragic situation of people being discriminated against from the north of Somalia in historic British Somaliland, actually what started to emerge was attacks upon civilians. There was mass killings where tens of thousands of Somalilanders were killed. Civilians were killed. It was one of the few conflicts where fighter jets took off from cities in the area in order to bomb the cities that they had taken off from, indiscriminately, killing thousands of civilians. Nomadic tribes. I'll give way to the Honourable Lady.
And for securing this very important debate. My constituency has a very large Somaliland population of those from Somaliland whose families suffered in, as he's described, in that conflict. What we've seen is last year Somaliland celebrated 30 years of the Declaration of Independence. And they've built up their own independent government, own currency and democratic elections. They've shown the capability to establish a state. Isn't it time, in his view, that the UK government formally recognise their right to self-determination and recognise their need to be an independent state?
The Honourable Lady raises a very important point, and this is the key point and reason for this debate, to actually discuss about the fact that Somaliland has developed so much. Because in those years of conflict, where so many Somalilanders were not just in the threat of their lives, but so many hundreds of thousands were displaced, both internally within Somaliland, but also externally. That dream and that vision of actually creating their own homeland once again, re-establishing those old territorial borders, burnt bright, and that is what they actually were able to achieve in 1991. I'll give way to the honourable gentleman.
Giving way and draw attention to my interests as one of the vice-chairs of the All-Party Group on Somaliland, and been a pleasure to work with the honourable gentleman on these issues. Would he also pay tribute to my predecessor, Alan Michael, and indeed many members of the Somalilander community in Cardiff and across the UK for exposing those atrocities back at the time, including in this House and elsewhere, and explaining what had gone on to the world, and commending them on what they did at that time.
I'd like to pay tribute to the honourable member's predecessor and, of course, so many people who live within his constituency. And, of course, in his constituency is a very established Somaliland community that's been there far longer than probably either he or myself have been on this earth. And so this country has deep, deep links with Somaliland that goes actually not just back many decades, but goes back a century and more, with many Somalilanders calling Britain very much their home, as well as Somaliland itself. I'd give way to my honourable friend.
First of all, I'm delighted that my honourable friend from South Africa has secured this important debate. Many of us who've been supporting Somaliland as an independent state very much welcome the fact that he's here. On that very point, he will know, no doubt, that many of Her Majesty's naval ships for 100 or more years have had Lashkars from Somaliland, Stokers and others who have built the first mosques in this country. Would he not agree with me that recognising the Somalilanders here in the UK is about also recognising our own past and our own future together as investors in a new Africa and demonstrators that independent states that govern themselves well in democracies can really succeed, and we can partner with them?
My honourable friend, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, is absolutely right. By taking the brave step to recognise Somaliland, we're actually not just opening up opportunities for Somaliland itself. We're actually opening up opportunities for British investors, British business to go there and work, very much creating the gateway to the whole of the Horn of Africa. I will give way to my right honourable friend and then my right honourable friend.
I'm very grateful indeed to my right honourable friend who has brought this most important subject to the floor of the House. Can I tell him that I have visited Hargeisa when I was Secretary of State for International Development, and indeed we spent quite a lot of time on exactly the issues he and the Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee have just raised. There is an enormous degree of normalcy there. The democratic structures, when they have elections, have held in extraordinarily difficult circumstances. There is proper governance. I've travelled on a bus in Hargeisa that was a result of British investment. And the case he's making about Somaliland becoming an independent state is one which the Foreign Office normally take the view that they don't want to lead it, but they would support it. But is he aware that the African Union is at least passively acquiescent in that view, if not actively supportive?
Well, on both areas that my right honourable friend raises, he's absolutely right. You know, you fly into Hargeisa Airport, it is a safe place in order to be able to visit. You can get a bus to the centre of Hargeisa, as my right honourable friend did. And when I visited, I must confess I didn't get a bus, but I will endeavour to do so next time I do visit. And he's equally right. You know, this is an opportunity. The Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office so often want to be led on these issues. There is a moment, sometimes, for Britain to lead as against to be led. I give way to my right honourable friend, the member for Elmet first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm most grateful to my right honourable friend. And I think my right honourable friend makes an important point about leading the world, because we have seen throughout the world that where Western nations don't get involved, China does. And when we've had many discussions in this House recently about the influence of China. So does my right honourable friend agree with me, when you look at the development taking place in Somaliland, that actually there are strategic interests in our country and in Western countries to not just see what happens, but to actually take an active leading role and not allow that vacuum to be filled by those who perhaps we have difficulties with?
My right honourable friend is so correct in the point as he makes. If you just look to the north of Somaliland and Djibouti, and you see the Chinese investment that is going into Djibouti, and the fact that actually where there is a vacuum, others do step in. And by showing the leadership that this country can show, by recognising Somaliland, actually it shows to those Somalilanders, it shows to the government of Somaliland, the value that we put on their friendship and their partnership. I give way to my right honourable friend.
I'm very grateful to my right honourable friend. I commend him for this debate, and I'm honoured to represent a Somaliland community in Swindon. Just building on the points made by right honourable members about the strategic importance of Somaliland, particularly its proximity to international shipping lanes. And we all know from British leadership under our good friend the noble Lord Haig, this country led the way in dealing with the issues of piracy emanating from the Horn of Africa. Is it not now another opportunity for Britain to show leadership and to recognise stable government in a region that is in pitifully short supply of such quality?
Yeah. Well, my right honourable friend is absolutely accurate in his assessment, and already, as we, even though we're not in a position where we've recognised Somaliland, we already have that level of cooperation with the Somalilanders. Visiting Somaliland when I was Defence Secretary, I saw firsthand the cooperation that British forces were already having with Somaliland in terms of supporting them in protecting their coastal waters, but also by protecting their coastal waters, keeping them safe for the international community. I give way to the honourable lady.
Thank the honourable member for giving way and thank him for securing this very important debate, and commend the government for the support it's been providing the administration in Somaliland. Liverpool Riverside has a very long established Somali community and Somalilanders, and I'd like to know whether the honourable member will join me in calling for the UK government to support a binding referendum within 2 years to allow Somalilanders to express their democratic will guaranteed by the international community. Thank you.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm not sure if you're an expert on Somaliland affairs, but it is the opportunity for you to brush up on them this afternoon. But the Honourable Lady makes an important point. But there's already been a referendum in Somaliland that has been absolutely clear as to what the wishes of the Somaliland people are, and that they want to see recognition, that they want to be independent, to have that independent state. But I'm sure if that is what is a hurdle that is required in order to be able to establish international recognition for Somaliland, that is something that the Somaliland government may wish to look at. I give way to the Honourable Gentleman, and then I will go to...
I'm very grateful to the Right Honourable Gentleman, and he has been extremely fortunate, not only in the House enabling him to have a lot of time this evening to debate this important topic, but of course in the number of people who are supporting him here and supporting the cause of Somaliland. And of course my own community in Wembley has a huge Somaliland community of expatriates, and one of the points that they've made to me is that they believe, and I would ask if he agrees with them, that in all likelihood a new Somaliland would desperately want to join the Commonwealth.
I think that on my visit to Somaliland and my discussions with so many Somalilanders here in the UK, there's a real sense of kinship between Somaliland, Britain and other Commonwealth nations, and I think they would very much want to join the Commonwealth, and actually I would certainly hope that the Commonwealth would open them with very much open arms. I will give way to the Honourable Member for Sheffield.
Thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for giving way and for securing this debate. I congratulate him on that. I've got the privilege to chair the all-party group on Somaliland, and we've got a large Somaliland community in Sheffield. The way he described the formation of what is currently legally Somalia, I think was really interesting, because immediately they gained independence, Somaliland was an independent country, and it voluntarily chose to enter into a union. So the concerns around changing post-colonial boundaries is not a case here in terms of an independent Somaliland. Post-colonial boundary, they were an independent country. And the idea now that Mogadishu has any remit in Somaliland is really a piece of nonsense, and it's time the government recognise that.
I very much agree with the Right Honourable Gentleman, and if you do look at the boundaries that have been proposed, they're exactly the same boundaries that were agreed between Britain, Italy and Ethiopia and the French in numerous treaties prior to that. Somaliland is not asking for a change in terms of the boundaries. They're very much what was there in 1960. And there is precedent in terms of the unwinding of acts of union or a confederacy, and you can only have to look to the other side of Africa, where you see the confederation between Senegal and Gabon, which was of course unwound in the late 1980s. So this isn't something that is unprecedented. What we're suggesting is actually going back and recognising that were well-established international boundaries that we ourselves recognise and we ourselves drew up. I will come to the Right Honourable Gentleman on the other side, but I'll just come to my honourable friend and then I will come to the left.
I thank my Right Honourable friend and neighbouring constituency MP. In the Defence Select Committee, we've just produced a report on the Navy and the importance of the sea in a defence capacity, and you just mentioned your visit as the Secretary of State for Defence. Do you believe, or does my Right Honourable friend agree with me, that it's vital that we recognise Somaliland due to the strategic importance of the location in a defence capacity?
I think that my honourable friend is absolutely accurate in terms of pinpointing the strategic importance of Somaliland. And I think that's one of the many reasons as to why it's so vital, not for just Britain, but also for the United States and other NATO members, to lead the way in recognising Somaliland, not just because of the many brilliant things that they have done there, but also the strategic importance of the country and how we reinforce and support that government. I'll give way to the Right Honourable Gentleman, the member for Ward.
And to pursue that, is it not really desirable that a state that is stable in this region, which is becoming increasingly unstable, achieves that level of recognition? Because we talk a lot about supply chain vulnerability, and this is one of the most vulnerable places we found when even one ship blocking the Suez Canal caused ripples right the way throughout industry. But also, we should recognise the importance that it would be for communities here and also those in Somaliland to be able to move freely, to be able to have passports that were recognised, to conclude international agreements, and to unleash the energy of the country, which, having a properly administered state in that region, enables them to do so. Isn't it time that we actually grasp this nettle and recognise Somaliland?
Deputy Speaker, the level of consensus that is bubbling away in this House is sometimes not always typical, but it is incredibly important to demonstrate the will and feeling of this House on this important issue. I'll give way to my right honourable friend in just a moment, but the Right Honourable Gentleman raises the important point of supply chains. Already you're seeing in the port of Berbera, DP World's investment in terms of the port of Berbera, but also very welcome the British International Investment, BII investment, the old Commonwealth Development Corporation investment amounting to hundreds of millions of pounds. So as a government, we actually recognise the importance of Somaliland. We're willing to invest hundreds of millions of pounds there because we realise that that opens up so much of the Horn of Africa to British goods and investment. But actually, we're still not in the place where we're recognising the state of Somaliland. And I think that's a real tragedy. It's also sad, so sad to see that so many Somalilanders have difficulty travelling to Somaliland. They can't fly direct from the UK, but have to go via either Addis Ababa or Dubai. Actually, by recognising Somaliland, we can make that step of making so many British citizens' lives easier by recognising it. I give way to my right honourable friend.
I'm grateful to my right honourable friend for giving way and pay tribute for securing this important debate, and I think the attendance here shows the strength of feeling across the House. But does my right honourable friend agree that recognition can take several forms, and there are some interim steps that the government could take that would show willing, positive progress towards the formal recognition that we all want to see? And that could be steps such as the Department for International Trade, or the Foreign Commonwealth Office, in its responsibilities to the Department for International Trade, to channel food and aid through Somaliland, rather than seeing Somaliland at the wrong end of the supply chain, often ending up with a raw deal.
Yeah. Well, that is absolutely correct. For so long that international development aid has been channelled through the Federal Republic of Somalia, through the government in Mogadishu, which has sadly meant that actually those people in Somaliland have often not got the level of assistance that actually this government was expecting them to get. And a perfect example of that was on vaccines. A large supply of vaccines was sent for the people of Somaliland, but it was channelled through the government in Mogadishu. So by the time it arrived in Somaliland, sadly, most of those vaccines only had a few days left in order for them to be dispensed. I'll go to my right honourable friend and then I'll go to the honourable gentleman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I really do thank my right honourable friend for allowing me to intervene. I don't have any Somalis in my constituency, but I have a great deal of love for the country. The reason being, my ayah came from Somaliland when we lived in Aden. Can I remind the House that the Aden Protectorate and the Somaliland Protectorate were very closely linked. I do remember my father flying over to Somaliland as part of the Aid and Protectorate levies when there was a close link. Somaliland has a real affection, the people of Somaliland have a real affection for this country. It goes back a long time, and it would be absolutely right for our government to encourage and support and allow Somaliland to be actually a real nation.
Well, we've seen the people of Somaliland pay a price for the defence of this nation, both in the First World War and in the Second World War. And if you go to Somaliland, you can see the Commonwealth war grave cemeteries of where so many Somalilanders gave their lives for the defence of this country and also beating fascism on the Horn of Africa. And I think there is a debt of honour that we owe the people of Somaliland to restore the freedom to them that they actually fought to preserve for us as well. I give way to the honourable gentleman.
I thank the Right Honourable Member for giving way and join others in congratulating him for securing this debate, which has demonstrated an exceptional degree of unity across the House in supporting his proposal. And he makes a good point on the debt of honour that we have to the people of Somaliland. My honourable friend, the member for Sheffield South East, highlighted the strong community that we have within the city who owe their origins to Somaliland, and it was in recognition of that that the Council in 2014 passed a resolution adding its voice to the demands for independence. But would he agree with me that the elections held last year, the parliamentary and local elections held last year, again another successful democratic moment within Somaliland, simply further reflected the maturity and the strength of democracy within the country, which is an essential building block for recognition for statehood, which should be recognised by the government.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I don't often stand up and advocate that the government should be following the leadership of Sheffield City Council, but on this occasion I very much do. It should try and catch up with what Sheffield City Council have been doing. And, you know, so many communities, whether it's Sheffield, Liverpool, Cardiff, Bristol, Swindon, we can go on, have actually welcomed Somalilanders, and Somalilanders have made these great cities and great communities their home, and will continue to do so. I give way to the honourable lady.
I thank the Right Honourable Member for giving way, and it's demonstrated tonight just how important this topic is for all of us here. Newport is home to the second largest Somaliland community in Wales, and I want to place on record my thanks for their contributions over the years to the city. It's been amazing. But I wonder, has the Right Honourable Member given any thought to how the devolved governments can play a role in supporting the people of Somaliland as they continue to seek formal recognition?
Well, I very much believe that this is a United Kingdom endeavour where we can all move forward with actually building those already existing bridges, but making them stronger between the United Kingdom and Somaliland. And actually, we've seen in municipal government and devolved government many steps already trying to encourage the links between our great nations of the United Kingdom and Somaliland. But now is really the time for the UK government to take the lead, for the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office not to be shy, not to think that policy is stuck in the 1960s, as has been already touched on by a number of members in this House. I'll give way to my honourable friend.
Thank you very much indeed to my honourable friend. I congratulate him on this debate on a very, very important subject. And we've heard in the House today unanimity on the very many reasons as to why we should recognise Somaliland. But I wonder, as a former Education Secretary, would he view and accept Somaliland as a champion of education in Africa for both boys and girls? And when we've heard the reference to how the devolved administrations and how this government can assist and help and develop and support Somaliland, the education system is not only something to be treasured, but perhaps we can support that in some way.
One of the most precious things that we can have in a nation is democracy, it's justice, but it's also the education that we give our children. And if you have privilege of going to Somaliland. You actually see boys and girls both being educated. There is no discrimination there. They recognise that they want to be educating all, because that is what will strengthen Somaliland for the future. I give way to my right honourable friend.
I'm most grateful to my right honourable friend. He's heard representations from a number of places where there are large Somaliland communities. Would you join with me in making the point that remittances into Somaliland from the diaspora is enormous? Some years ago, the level of remittancing was something like 6 times the annual state budget. And one of the things that the Minister could take away and consult with his officials about today is trying to make remittancing easier, so there's more competition, less charges for the enormous community in the United Kingdom to be able to send money back through the remittancing structure without paying exorbitant fees.
My right honourable friend is right to highlight the importance of remittances going into Somaliland. And actually, this government doesn't make it easier for people to be able to do that. And because this government takes a view that Somaliland is lumped in with Somalia, it makes it much more difficult for businesses to be able to operate there, make sure that there's a flow of money from the diaspora community in this country going back to Somaliland. And it's a very practical measure that the FCDO, working with Her Majesty's Treasury, could actually take up, look at, and how they could make those improvements. And I hope my right honourable friend, the Minister, will actually able to respond to that in his comments at the end of this debate. But this is a country that has incredibly proud links with this country. Yeah. This is a country that when we have been in need and what we have asked for help, they've responded. They've responded by sending their young men to defend our values and our freedoms. In 1991, this country emerged from years of subjugation by the regime in Mogadishu. It emerged from having had their children, having had so many citizens killed in cold blood. And it was able to establish its borders once more. It was able to put the structures in place for a legal system and elections. All across Africa, we are always asking for them to have a proper legal system, to educate their boys and their girls, and to make sure there is the establishment of democracy. Well, in May of last year, you saw the parliamentary elections in Somaliland, and they were peaceful, they were calm, they were fair. You saw the rollout of iris technology, the first use of this technology anywhere on the continent of Africa, to make sure that they were fair and they were properly run. All of this goes to show the maturity of this country. You've seen in Somaliland, you've seen different parties enter government and leave government, not questioning the veracity of their opponent's claim. Indeed, if I recall, there's one election, presidential election, was a margin of 80 votes. And that vote was accepted, and you saw that peaceful transition. I can't help thinking that there are some Western democracies, if a margin was quite so close, there might have been a little bit more controversy than what you saw within Somaliland. Somaliland has been this amazing shining beacon of everything we want to see flourish in Africa. It is the example that we want others to follow. But they need our help and they need our assistance, because around them they see real challenges. To the south in Somalia, you see the challenges of Al-Shabaab there. You see the disorder and the difficulties in Ethiopia. You see some of the real security challenges in Djibouti. Somaliland is a country that wants to be our friend. It's a country that turns to us and they ask us to show leadership. So I ask my right honourable friend, instead of delivering the pre-prepared brief that no doubt every Foreign Office minister has given for the last 60 years, show some guile, show some leadership, show some imagination, show the fact that he is a politician, not merely a tool of Foreign Office officials in order to read their words. I've worked with him in the Whip's office. I sure saw some moments of merit. But actually, as politicians and this House, we need to show leadership on this issue. We need to show our friends in Somaliland that we are willing to defend them as they have defended us. So even if he cannot give us all the promises that we would like to see, even if he cannot say that we can recognise Somaliland at the dispatch box today, he needs to go away, and we need to sit down and work out how we take those next steps. Because we cannot spend another 30 years pretending the reality on the ground of the existence of an independent Somaliland doesn't exist because it's not on the Foreign Office map. We need to respond to those realities. We need to lead on foreign policy. We need to show our Somaliland friends that we are there for them and that we will deliver for them. And we will not just talk about our history, but we'll talk about how we can make our history together in the future.
Stephen Doughty.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's an unusual pleasure to be able to speak in an end-of-day adjournment debate because of the timings. And I want to firstly congratulate and thank the Right Honourable Gentleman, the former Defence Secretary, for securing this debate today. I think it's been hugely powerful, and I think the voices that have been heard on both sides of the House, I think, show the strength of feeling and the strength of feeling that people have from their Somaliland communities here in the UK, but also about many of the issues that the Honourable Gentleman raised. And as I said, I wanted to declare my interest as one of the Vice-Chairs of the All-Party Group on Somaliland. It's been in existence for a very long time in this place, and I'm really pleased, Madam Deputy Speaker, I think in the spirit of this debate, to say that it includes members from all parties, it includes members from both houses, and many people who, like the Right Honourable Gentleman and I have also travelled to Somaliland and seen for ourselves the huge progress, the huge impressive progress that has been made, particularly since those very, very dark days which the Right Honourable Gentleman started his speech about the atrocities that were committed, the literal levelling of Hargeisa, the capital city, and the remarkable progress that there's been since, largely driven by Somalilanders themselves and by members of the diaspora. The Right Honourable Gentleman, the former International Development Secretary, who's still in the chamber, mentioned the importance of remittances, the role of Somaliland communities here in the UK in raising funds, of supporting projects in Somaliland has been absolutely crucial to that rebuilding since those very dark days. And I also, as I said, wanted to pay tribute to my predecessor, Alan Michael, who did so much in this place before to raise the concerns of Somaliland and to work with people from very many different parties and different communities and different civil society groups, and indeed different parties in Somaliland, to ensure that friendship and that progress continued. We visited as an all-party group back just a few years ago. It was the first visit that had been able to be undertaken for some time, and it was a remarkable visit. I had heard so much about Somaliland from Somalilanders in Cardiff before attending, but to see it with my own eyes, to meet with civil society groups, to meet with women, to meet with young people, to meet with members of the legislature, of both houses, to meet with members of the government, to see some of the progress that was being made, to hear about the work that the UK government had done in supporting both development projects, trade, economic development, and indeed security. I will happily give way.
I'm very grateful to him for giving way. Does he agree with me that, as well as recognition, we should also recognise, as he's done, the important contribution Somalilanders have made in the development agenda, and that the government's decision to cut the aid budget from 121 million between 2020 to 21 to 71.2 million this year is setting the nation back, and the government needs to reconsider that budget as well?
Well, the honourable lady, my honourable friend, raises an important point. She knows my views on the aid budget. I've expressed them in this place and many times. I know they're shared by many members on the other side. I think there have been some very welcome investments in Somaliland, both in terms of the aid budget, but also, as the right honourable gentleman mentioned, formerly CDC, now BII, and the investment in Berbera Port, DP World partnership there, which I think has been very important and welcome. But she's absolutely right that those cuts have impacted on our ability to work on a whole series of issues in a whole series of countries and a whole series of strategic locations. I think they were an error, and we've debated that many, many times in this place. But as I said, the history of the Somaliland community and those friendship links, and it was mentioned, goes back well beyond all of us in this chamber. In fact, in Cardiff, it goes back to the middle 1800s. Cardiff, of course, was one of the largest coal ports in the world, exporting to the world, the price of coal being set in Cardiff, and those friendship links, particularly with the Horn of Africa, the Arabian Peninsula and elsewhere, were absolutely crucial, and it's one of the reasons why there is such a strong Somaliland community in Cardiff, a strong Yemeni community as well, many communities from around the world that made that incredible part of my own community, which I live in, Butte Town, Tiger Bay, and at the heart of that has been this incredible contribution from Somalilanders, and it continues to this day, and they take great interest not only in what happens in Somaliland, but also, crucially, at home in Cardiff, and are key in many of our community organisations and institutions. So it's been a pleasure to hear from many of them in advance of this debate, and I don't want to name names because I will upset people by missing them out, but all those who contact me on a regular basis know who they are, and continue to stand up for the interests of Somaliland and Somalilanders. But it's a proud history in Cardiff, and it also stretches to that military history, those involvement in the Somaliland Camel Corps and Somaliland Scouts, the Somalilanders who, along with many people from across the Commonwealth, from across the former Empire and Dominions, who fought alongside us in World War I, in World War II, in many, many other conflicts. I think it's often overlooked, and yet in Cardiff we recognise those contributions on a regular basis. We also recognise the contribution made to those who served in our merchant navy, and every year when we celebrate merchant navy memorials in Cardiff Bay and elsewhere, when you look at that list of names, you see the Somali names, you see the names of people from all around the Commonwealth and those which we have friendships with. I'll happily give way.
On the point the honourable member made, I very well remember Somali soldiers coming across from the Horn of Africa to the Aden Protectorate, and my father having the honour to command really good soldiers and decent men.
And the honourable and gallant gentleman makes a very important point, and I think we need as a country as well to recognise far more the contribution of all of those from across the Commonwealth and our friends who made the contributions and in some cases the ultimate sacrifice in conflicts throughout many, many generations. I wanted just to turn to a few sort of practical points in the context of this debate. I think firstly it's recognising those strong links between so many cities across the UK with Somaliland, recognising that there are many who are British Somaliland dual nationals and yet experience many, many difficulties in terms of travel, visas, restrictions, all sorts of things that go on, and ensuring that they have the support available to them is very, very difficult given the current status and situation in Somaliland. And we heard from many members of the British Somaliland community on our visit who are expressing issues about, for example, if they lose a passport or they want documentations authorised, or why we don't have a bigger presence, for example, from the British Council. Many, many things. I met young people who want to come and study here in the UK, who want to build links between the universities and educational institutions in Somaliland with the UK, but are often denied those opportunities. And I think we could be doing so much more on a practical level as well to support those who have that dual nationality and dual heritage. Absolutely.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way and support his point in terms of the need for the British Council to be located in Hargeisa. And would he agree with me that the government maybe needs to think about the funding to enable that to happen, to develop relationships in Somaliland?
Absolutely. I mean, the British Council play a key role around the world. It's been deeply concerning. Again, an issue being raised on all sides of the House about the cuts that we've seen to them. But this was an issue that was specifically raised when we were there, and I hope that our links in that area can develop. I wanted to mention the huge progress that there's been on health in particular and development. I've had the pleasure, as many have across this House, of meeting the remarkable former First Lady, former Foreign Minister Edna Adan on many occasions. And if members haven't listened to her Desert Island Discs and other fantastic interviews with her, I'd strongly encourage them to do so. One of the most remarkable women I've had the pleasure of meeting. And I had the pleasure of visiting Edna's hospital that she helped resource and establish and has helped sort of fund out of her own pocket significantly. Maternity hospital, a training hospital to improve maternal health outcomes in Somaliland. Again, remarkable work being done there, but so much more that could be done if we were to develop our friendships further and ensure that there was the support there for that. We've seen remarkable progress in education. I visited Hargeisa University, a remarkable place doing brilliant work, where the majority of students, I understand, are women, are girls. Again, exactly the sort of example that we want to be setting around the world, ensuring that young women and girls have those opportunities and are able to thrive and seize all the opportunities that should be available for them, whether that's in Somaliland or elsewhere on the global stage. I'll happily give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and he's making a very powerful contribution in a debate that's been extremely good. Does he agree with me that Somaliland does stand as a beacon of hope and actually and showing what can be achieved in that sort of situation of democracy, and actually that's part of the reason why the UK government should officially recognise it for that work that it does and the leadership it can offer within Africa?
Well, I think that the leadership and the example that Somaliland has shown is there for all to see, and it's certainly there for those who've had the pleasure, as I have, of visiting, and I think it's long overlooked. Actually, it's progress in so many areas. The progress made in trade and the relationships we met with many businesses there who want to expand their trading relationships with the UK, who want to expand the trading relationships with their neighbours. Indeed, that's one of the crucial driving factors behind that investment in Berbera Port by DP World, by the UK and others. Absolutely critical, not least when other trading routes may be more difficult, may have the interests of other strategic, not what I want to say opponents, but other challenging countries in the world who may have a different agenda. It's absolutely crucial that we're getting in there and supporting those trade links and supporting the development of them. The politics has already been mentioned. Significant progress in elections and democracy, the holding of multiple elections, both at the presidential, at the parliamentary level. I've met with representatives of all the parties, civil society. Not everything is perfect. But there has been significant progress over recent years, and indeed we have played as the UK a key role in supporting the practicality of elections and ensuring that they are free and fair, and also through the election observation missions, which have often had strong UK support and contingents. The security situation has been mentioned as well. I would love to see the day when a more reasonable approach is taken to the travel advice for Somaliland. There have been some improvements recently, but unfortunately some of the travel advice at the moment puts off people travelling and building those links. I do urge the FCDO to look at that again and see whether they can be more open about the travel advice to Somaliland, because in reality, it's a very safe place. It's a place that you can do business, you can do education, you can travel, and we don't want to see potential friendships and links being pushed away. The strategic location of Somaliland has been absolutely rightly raised by a number of members in the House in the debate tonight, and particularly by the Honourable Gentleman proposing the debate. I think there is a very serious concern here about the activities of opponents, whether that be Russia, China, others operating in the region. We have a strong friendship. Somaliland wants a strong friendship with the UK. This is a key strategic location. I think it would be very foolish if we didn't recognise that in terms of our global Britain strategy and our wider strategic posture around the world, not least with a place that wants to have that close friendship with us. I'll happily give way.
The honourable gentleman for giving way, and congratulate my right honourable friend for securing this debate tonight. And would you agree with me on this issue that he's raising specifically on the strategic placement of it, that actually it does also, if we can use our Commonwealth connections across Africa, we can also highlight that strategic importance, not just in terms of its military and diplomatic links, but also its strategic place within actually the development of the Commonwealth going forwards for the future as well?
it's been a point that's been raised with me by the Somaliland government and by members of the Somaliland community on a number of occasions, and indeed as an all-party group, we previously raised the question of, for example, that even though that's not they couldn't attend as a full member of Commonwealth Summits, whether an observer status or an attendance in another capacity might be possible even now. And certainly building links through the Commonwealth and building links through other international organisations is going to be critical. As I mentioned, it was a delight to have the support of the International Parliamentary Union in terms of our APPG links, because I think there's huge opportunity there, for example, for mutual training and exchange and links between our two parliaments, and a real mutual desire to do that on both sides. And again, through the Commonwealth, that could be also key. But I wanted to end, Madam Deputy Speaker, by just re-emphasising the huge contribution that Somalilanders have made to Cardiff, that they've made to the UK, and that the huge benefits that come out of that mutual relationship of friendship and respect. I think it's a relationship that hasn't had enough attention. It's a relationship that needs far more attention, both from our government and indeed in this place. And I'm really delighted today by the voices that we've heard speaking up a friendship of support and solidarity with Somaliland. I think that shows a very strong message to the government, and I look very much forward to hearing what the Minister has to say.
Jim Shannon.
Madam Chair, and it's an absolute pleasure to make a contribution. I often, Madam Chair, make contributions, but usually interventions in the debate. Tonight I get a chance to perhaps say a wee bit more. So I want to, first of all, congratulate the Right Honourable Gentleman for South Staffordshire for bringing this forward. In his introduction, he said many things which I totally agree with, but he mentioned the words the union of equals. I would hope that the result of this would be that very request that the Honourable Gentleman, Right Honourable Gentleman referred to would actually take place. Also, there's been much talk about the Somaliland citizens having supported the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland through their participation in wartime activities and alongside them, and that's very important. So that strong relationship is very clearly there, and I believe that our Minister hopefully will reply in a very positive response. And I would wish to perhaps, Madam Chair, tonight draw the House's attention to something that concerns me. I'm Chair of the APPG of Freedom of Religious Belief, and I want to speak very quickly on that because the Honourable Right Honourable Gentleman referred to that in some of his contributions, as others have. So I want to draw the House's attention to the situation of Christians in Somaliland. Of course, it is heartbreaking that so few Christians remain in Somaliland, having been driven out due to extreme persecution or even killed. It is estimated that only a few hundred Christians live there today, but it is impossible to know the exact number due to the secrecy that they are forced into as a result of the very divisive clan mentalities and vigilantism that pervade that country. Christians suffer ostracisation and discrimination from their wider families and the communities wherever they are discovered, and the few Christians remaining in Somaliland are forced to worship in secret for fear of attacks from extremist groups like Al-Shabaab, the Right Honourable Gentleman referred to in his contribution, propagates anti-Christian ideology and threatens converts to Christianity with execution upon discovery. The women in Somaliland are in many cases under threat. The situation is even worse for those who are discovered to be Christians, fearing rape, forced marriage, or being stoned to death. So I would hope that the next debate will illustrate and raise awareness about those things, and perhaps maybe in the requests that we're making, these things can be addressed, because I think it's central, and I believe it's central, and our government has made it central in relation to the ministers they've appointed, that when it comes to foreign policy, that we have a particular focus upon religious persecution and the persecution of ethnic minorities and the issues of human rights. So those are key to where I am. So I would make a plea to my Minister and to Government for those improvements and those things to be central to any steps forward, which we all, I believe, in this House tonight wish to see. I don't have in my constituency any people that I'm aware of from Somaliland, but it doesn't make my contribution, Madam Deputy Speaker, any less of a support for what the Right Honourable Gentleman has said, and to those who have, like the Honourable Gentleman who spoke just before me, who very clearly has a very strong community. While political factors are undoubtedly at play in this conflict, the religious motivation for attacks in this region cannot and should not be denied, with Christians suffering the worst of this persecution. So I wish, and we wish in this House, and all the contributions have said it very clearly, we wish to help Somaliland economically. But I do feel it's central to any agreement there must be the human rights guarantees that we wish to see, and the religious freedom that we wish to see. So if we can help, and we do want that to happen, and we should help, and we must help. And others have referred to the democratic process, to the education opportunities that quite clearly we can build upon. The jobs and a strong legal structure, improvements to the health through the COVID vaccines, which the right honourable referred to. There's been much talk of history, the history that unites us. But today, I believe that we also, and I think it's really important when we look back in history, and I love history. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's always been probably one of my few subjects that I probably enjoyed at school and did very well at. But I believe that we also must now, through this debate, look to the future. The UK government stated that it will not formally recognise Somaliland as a sovereign state until they initiate a process to do so with the federal government of Somalia. But human rights issues and religious liberty needs to improve, and it must change. So with that, I do support and agree that it's important that the UK maintains diplomatic relations and a supportive presence in Hargeisa through this process to ensure that there is not a breakdown in relations between Somaliland and other African countries. Again, I thank the Right Honourable Member for South Staffordshire for bringing this matter to the House and the adjournment debate, which has benefited from a large number of Right Honourable and Honourable Members who all collectively want the best for Somaliland. I believe the Minister wants the best for Somaliland as well, and its people. And that is what we're trying to achieve. Somaliland needs our help. Perhaps this debate tonight has been the opportunity to do just that. And let's not be found wanting. Tonight the time has arrived, and I believe the contribution of all those who spoke tonight is an indication of our request for our government, our Minister, to do well for them. Thank you so much.
Kerry McCarthy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I didn't intend to speak at all, but I'm glad to have the opportunity to say a few words. And I do want to start by congratulating the Right Honourable Member for South Staffordshire for securing this debate today. When I was first elected in 2005, I was only selected as the candidate for Bristol East about 10 weeks before polling day, and during that very short election campaign, I was approached by people from the Bristol Somaliland community. First that I'd even heard of Somaliland, and let's say by the time I came into this place I was very much a firm supporter of the need for recognition. And the Honourable Member for Cardiff South and Penarth, his predecessor who's already paid tribute to, Alan Michael, somehow this had reached him on the grapevine. And I remember him accosting me in the division lobby, I think on my first vote here, and saying we need to campaign on Somaliland, and he was on the front bench at the time, but a year later in 2006 we set up the all-party group, and I'm pleased to have been an officer I think pretty much ever since then. And I do congratulate the current Honourable Member for Cardiff South and Penarth for just being the mainstay of the group and organising all our meetings, and just being such an expert and a source of information on what's going on there. As has already been said, Somaliland is a beacon of democracy not just in the Horn of Africa, but in Africa. The fact that it has managed to hold peaceful elections, I think the Right Honourable Member referred to the election in 2003, where the presidency changed hands by 80 votes, and I think if proportionately an 80, whatever the equivalent of an 80-vote majority was in the American election, if Donald Trump had lost by that amount, I don't think we'd ever have heard the end of it. What was slightly disappointing about the most recent elections was that although it was yet another peaceful handover, there's still quite a lot of progress that needs to be made on female representation. There was one woman MP, but now there's 0 out of the 82 elected MPs, so there's also low turnout in some areas. So I would hope that through Westminster Foundation for Democracy or other mechanisms we have, we can do a bit more work on that front. I would join my honourable friend in paying tribute to Edna. I too have visited her hospital in Hargeisa. She's a formidable woman, and indeed there are many formidable reasonable women that I've met that have been campaigning on issues like FGM, on issues like maternal health services, and indeed for recognition for Somaliland. The final point I just want to make, I mean, other than I would echo what my honourable friend said about just the sheer economic opportunities that would be available if we recognised Somaliland. I've heard there's amazing scuba diving on the north coast by Berbera, and the fact that it could be opened up as a peaceful tourist destination if it wasn't associated with Somalia, but also many other economic avenues that could be explored. And I share the concerns of people that are worried about Chinese influence if we don't step in. But the main thing I want to say, though, is it is clear that Somaliland is an independent country. It has functioned as such since 1991. It had established itself, albeit for a very short time before it went into partnership with Somalia. It established itself as a post-colonial independent country. And what is really frustrating, this message that the UK will recognise Somaliland, but we want to be second to do so. And sometimes there's a bit of concern about being seen as too colonialist, and it's rather patronising that we are the ones that grant nationhood on the country. But I remember when Mark Mallock-Brown was a very good Minister for Africa in Gordon Brown's government, and he really engaged with the APPG on Somaliland, and I really thought we were getting somewhere. I really thought, you know, he'd had conversations with various African countries, the African Union. It looked like we were almost there in terms of that recognition status. But the last we've heard, I think the current Minister for Africa said in November 2021, our policy remains it's for Somaliland and the federal government of Somalia to decide their future. Well, it's nothing to do with the federal government.
The honourable lady for giving way. I think she raises a really important point, because you're effectively giving the final say, the decision-making power, to the country that doesn't have free and fair elections, to the country that doesn't have a judicial and legal systems, that doesn't educate boys and girls. We're effectively rewarding poor behaviour and actually being harsher on those who actually demonstrate the types of behaviour and the types of system that we really want to encourage.
I mean, that was exactly my point. It is nothing to do with the federal government of Somalia. The future of Somaliland should not be